was a really good video, very long. Must have taken a long time to do it. And we just want to welcome you to the stage, Max. Welcome, man.
Hi guys, thanks ever so much for having me. Sorry I'm late.
Yeah, thanks for joining us. And actually, I'll let you introduce yourself to the community first, and then we can go into the video.
Yeah, sure. So hi everyone, I'm Max Walker-Williams, and I have a YouTube channel. I create content for it. I try to be as unbiased as I can. I do, I kind of, my niche is looking at things that are sometimes pretty complicated and trying to explain them in a way that anyone can understand. And some people seem to like that content. I've grown a group of companies in the real world in Web 2, if you like, and so a lot of people seem to respect my opinion because I don't need to pump a coin in the hopes of making it, or I have the luxury of being able to, within reason, do what I like and say what I think, because I'm not beholden to anyone, I'm not paid by anyone, I'm not sponsored, nor do I need to be. And so that's quite an important or quite a good luxury to have, because I don't need anything in Web3 to succeed in order to be comfortable. So, and that's it. And I've had the great fortune of interviewing some of the world's thought leaders and experts in the cryptographic and other spaces, including a Nobel Peace Prize winner for mathematics and other people. So that's kind of the backstory to it. And then I held a poll here on Twitter, just asking if people would like me to make a video about MultiversX or ICP and MultiversX1. So I did, and here we are.
Excellent. Yeah, thanks again for joining us. And for those that are down there, go ahead and like and share this out so we can get some people in here. And if you haven't seen his video, it is linked up top, and we'll jump into it. And I see you got your hands raised, so what's going on? Let go ahead, jump in.
Yeah, welcome, Max. And I just wanted to thank you as well for looking into MultiversX. I think it's very interesting for us all to see the perspective of someone that doesn't know that much at the beginning, and seeing what they can find out and what they think about the potential future and the strategy of the space. I think it's just important to start a little bit with a bit of the context of how much research and how long it took you to make the video, because it was very extensive. It was a very long video, and I really enjoyed that you went quite detailed and into a lot of the videos, the interviews and so on about this. So I was just wondering how much time that took you.
Thanks very much, first of all, for watching. So from start to finish, they usually take me about 2 weeks, and I try to look at the metrics that matter to me, because if I'm covering the project, then it's got to have some sort of future in my mind. It's got to be worth my time, and so I genuinely believe that MultiversX does have a future. And so, the technology aside, if it was proof of work, it'd be a non-starter. So that's almost a given on my journey. So for me, it becomes about how likely is it to succeed, and what does that success look like. And so it becomes about who's excited about this project, Google Trends, and it's all very well and good. There aren't many good projects out there that have idiots behind them. There's a few, but there aren't many. And so it's a given that the team behind MultiversX are going to be good at what they do in their relative departments. So then it becomes about, okay, so how do they interview, and what do they talk about, and what's important? And when they're asked questions, do they answer them? And do they answer them in a way that tells me that what they're saying is right? And so, and that's why I watch so much of the videos of the people behind it where possible, because having a degree in XYZ is fine, but what does that actually mean in real life? How are they utilizing that? Do they know what they're talking about? So Ben's interviewed, and I think I reference it in the video, and it's a really critical answer to how are you going to get people onto this platform? Now, him having a degree or not has no bearing on his answer, but his answer is incredibly important to the future success of this project, in my mind, because that answer is everything. Because you can have you can have the cure to cancer, but if nobody's buying it or using it, then it's for nothing. So how are you going to get people onto the platform is the critical. How efficient the platform is important, but it's irrelevant if nobody's using it. And so that's why I look at the videos to see what their answers are, because a lot of what you need to know about a project is in the answers of the people behind it.
Yeah, and you bring up great points for sure. And I want to bring up some of the things I really liked about your video. And for one, the way you go in blinds, like you mentioned, and not looking or taking opinions or other people's advice. I think that's great, and that's kind of how I try and go into things as well. And especially when I look at YouTube, if I'm researching, and I'll just toss out Hbar, since that's another one of your major projects, and I'll search on YouTube Hbar flaws, and then I'll search Hbar 100x or whatever it may be. So then you get both sides of it, and then you dive into the specifics. And I think you did really great with that, going all the way from Google Trends to specifics. There's some things we definitely want to correct. And kind of go over, but overall, I like the content. And some of the things that I definitely agree with is, one, you mentioned at the end, and you kind of were just talking about it yourself, is the transparency, and how Benjamin considers himself a philosopher, which it kind of makes sense, I guess. And I never really thought about that, but the way he does speak is very high level and philosopher like, and always not to the point. I will say that what I took out of his video, though, and the specific question there, was that his response to that is putting all the tools in place in order to onboard people and to make it easy and user friendly. And that is something that they definitely do very, very well. I know you said that as well in the video, complimenting X Portal and how user friendly and how great it runs and looks, and their website as well. I think you even said that it's the best crypto website you've ever seen, which is it's awesome. And I agree. The one thing that one of the things that they are really, really good at is user experience and design. And I haven't found another app or, like you said, website and all that can top what they do. And obviously there's things that are missing as well, which you bring up in the video. And you also mentioned that they're taking on a lot, which is certainly the case. They're building the primary wallet, they're building the primary DEX, they're building the primary launch pad, as well as obviously the main chain. And people can compare it almost to everything Solana's taking on with a phone and physical stores and whatnot. So there's a lot going on there. So I thought that was a great point for sure to bring up.
Yeah, thank you. I think I'm nervous for MultiversX, and I'm more nervous for, just speaking honestly, and you're welcome to disagree, but I'm nervous for the people who've put their hard-earned money in the token. And the reason I'm nervous is because, as I said in the video, what they do incredibly well, but that's not enough. Like I said, you can have the cure for cancer, but if nobody's... So I have two issues for the future of MultiversX, and that is, number one, they're fighting some of the largest, or certainly competing against some of the largest companies in the world. And if they won today, they've won nothing, because, with the greatest respect, MultiversX, just through the sheer money that Mark Zuckerberg's pouring into it, is the world leader of metaverses. And when you go, I don't know if you guys have been on it, but when you go on it, 30 people in a room is a busy room, and there are, between 1,000 and 10,000 people using the platform at any one time. So the market they're trying to win a share of is so minuscule at the moment that it's not worth fighting for, and they've got to win that fight. And that's a tall order. So they're fighting on several different fronts with massive companies for a tiny piece of the market. And you might say, yeah, but it's the future. And I agree with you, it is the future. But they've got to get from where they are today and where the market is today to that future. And they've got to eat and keep the lights on in the meantime. So how much money have they got to get from A to B? And they're going to need as much as Meta, and there's no guarantee that Meta's going to do it, and they're throwing billions at it. I mean, I don't know if you guys know, but Meta are putting up physical shops temporarily for 3 months at a time. I've been in one in New York, and it's fantastic, and it's fully staffed, and they give you an experience, and you can buy the Oculus hardware, and it's great. And they're still getting between 1,000 and 10,000 people on in the metaverse at any one time. And I just think they're trying to build literally an entire world whilst also competing with the likes of crypto.com, who are struggling. So they're fighting for a market share of a tiny market. There is no market to share. And I do believe it is the future, and I do believe it will come. But what happens to them between now and then? That's my concern.
I'll let you go first, Dave.
Sure. Yeah. And before I even get into a response there, for everyone here listening, MultiversX just announced their launchpad coming in 3 weeks. So I believe we've got Haddam coming really, really soon. It just came out an announcement. So just wanted to plug that real quick. And to your point about the competing, what I would say to that is, for one, and I don't want to get to the branding, which you kind of mentioned in the beginning with Elrond. And I know you said that it failed, but then you kind of backtrack a little bit on that. A large part of the reason for the rebranding was due to kind of necessity. For one, they were using a name that was a registered trademark that they potentially could have had issues with in the future. So it had been in discussion, I believe, for quite some time that they needed to move away from Elrond due to the whole Lord of the Rings and Tolkien and all that stuff. But also, for anyone who's been in the ecosystem for more than a year or two, we know that the brand was very, very fragmented before. We had Elrond, and then we had Meyer App, which is now Xportal. We had X Launchpad, which was another name I can't even remember that had nothing to do with Elrond. And I think we had Meyer Dex. And so basically you had all these projects that someone would have no idea that they were actually connected or tied together. So the rebrand is to kind of bring everything together under the power of X, as Benny would say. And I personally like it a lot. I know a lot of people, or some people, still don't. I attribute that to the fact that people just hate change, and people that's their main reasoning. For anyone new coming into the ecosystem, like even you said yourself, you love the branding. And I think that's the case probably for the majority of people that are coming in fresh or kind of see the big picture. But to the competing aspect that you brought up, the video that you actually quoted Benjamin, his question, is one of the best videos I've seen personally for him describing what MultiversX is. If you watch the entire video, and I think it's like 19 minutes long, but he goes into how MultiversX it's so much more, but not even close to a metaverse, and it's misinterpreted. A lot of people, when they heard the name and they saw the rebrand, they think, oh crap, they're going the route of Facebook. They're just going to create a metaverse, and that's their entire goal, which is far from the truth. Which I know you've listened to some of Benny's interviews. His view of the metaverse is so much more than just Ready Player One or this virtual world. And with MultiversX, they're looking to merge the real world with the virtual world, which we all know we're going to be spending a lot of time in the next decade, whether it's work meetings virtually or parties, concerts, whatever it may be. So there's a lot more to it than just going the metaverse route and competing with Meta. So I don't really think I wouldn't even say they're competing at all. And also, you brought up xFabric, and I think there's a little misunderstanding of what xFabric is, because what xFabric is going to be, or one of the main functions, is it's going to be a no-code dApp to create other dApps and shards for projects to come and have their own shard on the network. And it's going to be completely no code based, so anyone can come and do it. So it doesn't compete with, I think you even mentioned it competes with Hbar and Solana, and you were basically naming a lot of blockchains, which xFabric it's not that at all. It's a no code tool, which is going to be very powerful.
Yeah, forgive me. When I say they're competing, I mean, Hbar is not a blockchain, it's a hash graph. But when I say they're competing, I don't mean they're competing with the platform. I mean, they're competing with the products built on the platform. And no code NFT creation has been a thing on Hbar and many, many other platforms for 8 or 9 months. And I think if we just zoom out for a second, I think this is my main point. I do not argue the branding is amazing. The website's the best I've seen. I stand by that. I wish other platforms had a website as good as MultiversX. This is my main point. If MultiversX was the very best of what it does or what it intends to do with regards the multi-worlds, the only other comparison to be the best at the moment today is Meta. If it was going to be the best app where you could buy and trade NFTs, have a debit card, and so the pinnacle of success in that space right now, whether we like it or not, is crypto.com. If MultiversX was both of those things, they'd lose £1.8 billion this year. So how many £1.8 billion can they lose before they go bust? That's the problem. I'm not arguing with how well they do what they do. What they do is incredibly well. My issue, and it's not an argument, it's just my issue, my concern, my concern is that my observation is that the companies today, because you guys are buying this token and you're investing your money either today or before today, is based on the success of the business behind the token. And the business behind the token, if it were the best possible version, it could be today, the companies it's emulating, and I use the word emulating very loosely just to make the point, are losing £1.9 billion or dollars this year. So how do we get from where we are today with the market leaders losing that money to a healthy, growing, sustainable is the keyword, ecosystem? And if it's going to be no code, and I'm sure it's going to be fantastic, and it will be, if it's anything like their other products, it'll be better than the alternatives on Hbar. But the alternatives on Hbar are losing money. So it'll be the best version of a bad business, not because of the business model, but because of the timing. There is not enough people to carry a platform that is trying to do what this. Now, take the opposite of that with something like Chili's. Chili's is, as a tech goes and as branding goes, isn't a patch on MultiversX. But they do one thing incredibly well, which is the tokenization and NFTs of sporting talent. That's it. That's all they do. Their overheads are small. They're growing. They're adding things year on year, but they made a net profit last year. So this is my issue, is how does MultiversX survive long enough to get to where they want to be? And if I had the honor of interviewing Ben, these are the kind of questions I'd be asking. And from what I've seen, and I don't know this for sure, but from what I've seen, I think he'd struggle to answer the questions.
Well, yeah, I accept the criticism very much, Max, and I think these are the kind of questions that need to be asked, because this is actually something I brought up a few months ago in the real bottom of the bear market. We need to start thinking about how these chains are going to survive the long term and what their business model will be to survive through to the bull market. I would just say with this, firstly, like as Dave was saying, his version of the metaverse is very different. So you won't actually be using Oculus headsets. You won't be paying any of the hardware costs. You'll be using something like the Xportal app to go into, and again, a very different kind of experience to what Metaverse are trying to do. They're planning mostly social events and sporting events and all of these kind of things as well. So I think if they start doing something like that, they could easily make a lot of revenue from someone like Manchester United, who has billions of fans across the world. And they want to connect those fans on a better way than just watching on a Sky TV or something, especially since a lot of people in third world countries struggle to get proper satellite, but they might have some internet connection as well. And I would say a lot of this is kind of how they're planning on getting the money. So they've also got the partnership with Tencent Cloud, where the cloud services will be used on the blockchain, and I'm sure they'll be paid by Tencent for that as well. And I think that's almost a little bit of the solution to that problem there. But I completely understand the question of how do you take in all of those costs, especially when you're building such big products.
And this is where the competition comes in, because it's all very well and good saying, and I take your point, by the way, fair enough, but when you say, I know you used it as an example, but Manchester United, one thing my company Utopian Lab deals with some of the largest companies in the world to help them digitalize their content, talent, whatever it might be, and then monetize that. And one of the things that all of these large organizations have in common is they're not stupid. And they might not understand how it works, they might not understand completely the opportunity, but when MultiversX approaches Manchester United, they are going to have to either license the IP, which means they're in direct competition with other people who've licensed the IP, i.e. Meta, or it's going to be an exclusive contract. And again, how many of those contracts can they pay for before they run out of money? So if Manchester United say, yeah, absolutely, you can use our thing, but it's a revenue share, but there's no license to pay, but it's a revenue share IP model, then you can either watch it through Meta or you can watch it through MultiversX, which means you're in competition. Or if they say, we'll only sign an exclusive deal for 3 years, but we want X up front and we want minimum guarantees, how many of those can they sign? And how many of those do they have to sign to get critical mass, to get the network effect? And they are in direct competition, because Manchester United are going to say, okay, well, thank you for your bid of £1 million a year for 3 years fixed. We're just going to put the feelers out and see what Mark Zuckerberg wants to pay for Manchester United exclusively. So they are in direct competition, whether it's licensed IP through a revenue share model or whether it's exclusive contract. I wouldn't want to get into a monetary fight with Mark Zuckerberg personally. So there's just a lot that people need to understand if they're investing their money in a project, of exactly what it is these guys are trying to achieve. And if they achieve it, you'll all be trillionaires, billionaires. It's like 1 in a 10,000, 1 in a billion shot of it being exactly as it's described. And maybe I'm getting old, but I'm in the real world and I work with these brands and companies that they mention, and honestly, there's a hell of a long way between here and there, and the twists and turns and the costs and it's just a minefield. And if you're in this project to make money, no shame in that. If you bought a coin because you think it's going to go up in value, and you think it's going to go up in value because of what they're producing, then purely in investment terms, there's projects that will succeed in a much smaller way, but a much surer way. And that's kind of my concern.
Fair point. And I guess what I'd still say to that is, and we'll probably have to bring this to another space or discussion at some point, but I still don't see the comparison really. I don't think it could be compared to or competing with crypto.com or Facebook or a lot of these companies that have been discussed. But like I said, we'll probably
can I just answer that point quickly? So
sure.
I'll tell you why. Because it's a zero-sum game. Because if I have a debit card with crypto on it, I choose one. Sure, some people will have 2, 3, 4, 5 cards, but most people, the majority of people have one bank account with one bank and a few credit cards. If they're going to have a crypto wallet eventually, which I believe everyone will, they're going to have, particularly in the medium term, they're going to choose one, they're going to go to the effort, they're going to commit, and then they're going to transfer some funds to it. So if they have a crypto.com crypto debit card, they are not going to have a MultiversX one or a Hbar one or whatever. So that's why it's direct competition. And if I'm watching Manchester United, I can only watch it through one thing. So it'll be MultiversX on my phone, or it's going to be through my Oculus headset. And the examples go on and on and on. So there's a tiny market at the moment, and of that market, there's a tiny proportion of people that are engaging with this space. And of those, they have multiple choices of debit card, of whatever. And more people are coming into the space in terms of competition. Binance, for example, are now talking about, Bitcoin's just started doing NFTs, for God's sake. So yeah, that's the competition point.
Yeah, I respect that, and I just wanted to just add a little bit, and then I'll give it over to Don for his question. A business does not need to be the leader in the industry to make profit. And it also depends a lot on the costs. We don't know what the costs of MultiversX team are giving right now, but I would say it's not that much given how much we've seen in the marketing so far. So I would say as well, Meta, Facebook, and also Crypto.com, they're doing massive costs, yes, but that's because they're trying to create the industry. They're trying to create this industry, and these are the times when the big costs really come. The costs come less and less, and I still understand the point that you're still competing to some level with some of these big companies. It's a little bit more nuanced with like what you're competing in and everything. But I just wanted to add that little point there. But go ahead, Don. What's your question, man?
Hey, how's everybody doing? How you doing, Max?
I'm good, thank you, buddy. How are you?
What's up, Deeps? I'm just surprised no one's mentioned X Money yet, and being competition directly to PayPal, and the benefits of X Money merchant accounts, being that it's going to be a flat rate of 1%, no chargebacks. When, with all due respect, Max, when I've never heard of MultiversX being compared to like Meta. I would never compare it to Meta, me personally. Just being in the sense that I think we all know, or at least we should all know, that no one's using the metaverse anytime soon. I think, X worlds and stuff like that, while that's going to be in the future, I think they do know that. And that's why there's been such a push with Utrust and TwizPay in that regard, because that's where I see most of the adoption coming from here, is from the X Money side. And I'm just curious, Max, what are your thoughts as far as X Money is concerned?
I think it's got fantastic potential, but these massive companies are not going to just lay down and lose market share, and they play dirty. So people sign other companies up with contracts. If they'll undercut them, they'll do whatever it takes to survive, right? It's life and death. So when somebody, you can have the nicest person in the world, you start strangling them and you see them turn to fight for their life. Well, that's what this is. It's not the crypto ecosystem is generally quite friendly, particularly within its own ecosystem. People are very engaging, but at the top level business, it's the opposite. It's kill or be killed. And so even if you think, for example, and I agree with you that nobody's going to be in the multiverse for a long time, Mark Zuckerberg will just start buying up contracts to land block other companies from doing the same thing. So they might start approaching companies and they're like, we're sorry, we're in a 5-year exclusive, but they haven't doing anything. They're just paying us money to not do a deal with anyone else. And PayPal are not going to just lay down quietly. And guess what? PayPal have got more money for their advertising budget than MultiversX probably has total. And they can have a really small burn rate, and that's perfectly acceptable. But if I said to you, you can use Multiverse, and not you personally, but somebody who's just out in the street walking along, and you can use Multiverse, Multiverse Pay, Multiverse Card, Multiverse X, whatever it might be, and say it's got this feature, and that feature. And PayPal start to lose market share, they'll just half their costs because they've got the money to do it. And even if they didn't and they went through their burn rate, they can go and raise again and again and again, and they'll just burn them out because you're going up against really, really well-established, incredibly wealthy Web 2 companies. And they're not just going to lay down and say no problem. They may even buy Multiverse. Has anyone considered the fact that they might buy MultiversX and shelf it just to stop the competition? If they can't beat them by forcing them out or blocking them or through contracts or legal routes, they'll just buy them and then bin them. Adobe, they've got massive. IBM are absolutely massive company. They don't have an innovation department. They just buy the competition and delete them, or they buy them and then bring that technology into strip it for parts and put it into their own white label. So it's just, I hope people can understand like the fight that MultiversX has on its hands. And I hope I'm wrong. But you can't dismiss this concern because it happens all the time, every day. Bill Gates spent 4 years in court defending his actions, and some of the stuff that he did was heinous. But that's the competition. That's the kind of people that these guys are going up against.
Oh yeah, 1000%, dude. 1000%, I agree, and I think that's why I'm not quite sure who mentioned Tencent, but that's probably part of the reason for that strategic collaboration right there, or that partnership. Is to get some of those, because Max, you're exactly right. I mean, these companies are not going to lay down, and they don't play fair. They don't play fair at all. So yeah, while I think it's going to be an uphill battle, I think with strategic partnerships like Tencent, I think they have a way better shot. And thanks for the time, guys.
You're welcome. Thanks ever so much for having me. It's really good to talk to you.
Yeah, thanks for coming up, Don. I would just say, Max, with and I agree, the Web 2, I mean, the main big companies are cutthroat and they're all about profit and about squeezing everyone else out. Would you not say that this is a problem for basically all blockchains, given that they all want to run businesses and so on?
No, and I'll tell. Well, yeah, yes and no, and I'll tell you the difference between nearly all other blockchains that I've looked at is that they are layer ones. They are just there to provide a network. They are the pipe. They don't run the fluid through the pipe. So the reason it's different is because other companies are building products on that network. The network is of no threat. It's just a new technology. So why would PayPal try and crush Hbar when Hbar doesn't offer a payment service? Now, if a business is built on Hbar that offers a payment service, they may go for that company, buy it, whatever, or they may end up becoming a GC member and building on it themselves. And this is proven through the likes of Avery Dennison. They turned over $7 billion last year. They made $1 billion net profit. And they've built an app called Atma, atma.io, which they've just signed Adidas, the clothing brand, to track. So you can go on the label, scan the QR code, and you can see the carbon impact of that T-shirt that you're buying. And you have a choice of buying a cheaper one or a dearer one, depending on where you stand on the environment. And you can see where the cotton came from and whether it's sustainable and so on and so forth. And every part of that trainer or whatever it might be, you can track. Now, they're a massive company. Now, companies, as well as wanting to kill, hurt, through any means necessary competition, they're also inclined to use the latest technology. And if something is neutral, it's just a technology, it's agnostic, they can take that and build on it themselves and just beat the competition on that network. But they're not looking to attack the software itself. And that is a key differentiator between MultiversX and a lot of the other platforms, is that they don't build their own products. It's not a one-stop shop. They're effectively a layer 1, 2, and 3 on their own project, which has its strengths as well, by the way, because what they do so well. But yeah, it is different, definitely, to other technologies.
Yeah, I appreciate that a lot, and I do agree. MultiversX is basically running like a company, whereas most other blockchains are running like the layer.
They're a service. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
it's basically like running an economy, and you bring in the businesses to make their own products, and everyone exchanges money on your economy. Whereas MultiversX is much more business. They build in their own products and stuff like that.
Exactly.
I would just say, with like blockchains, and I know Hbar is Hashgraph, but with blockchains and stuff, you've got big banks such as JP Morgan and so on. They're creating their own closed source blockchains. Do you not think other blockchains are at risk of something like, I know Google is working with Hbar, but other companies like Google, maybe IBM and stuff like this, creating a closed source blockchain, which they can then use for their supply chain and so on?
Well, it's a really interesting point. I think two things are going to happen. I think yes is the short answer, but I also think that a lot of blockchains can have side networks. So, for example, to use your two examples, both Google and IBM are governing council members of Hbar. Both are utilizing the technology, but as well as using that, and there's a good reason for it as well, which I'll explain in a second, having a public decentralized network is very useful for some things, but you wouldn't want your payroll slip to be on that public ledger. But having it seamlessly, having a side private chain on that Hashgraph, for example, is very useful because you can integrate the entire system, having a private network and a public network that flick between the two seamlessly. So your medical records, your CV, your payroll, your wage slip, whatever, is on the private network, but the company's carbon credentials are on the public network. And so you can flick between the two. And I also think they may have a secondary, which would be a purely internal for super secure, internal stuff. But to use your example, like MultiversX is trying to be the server for the internet and the website, whereas a lot of others are just the servers on the internet. So when Amazon comes along, they build on their server and they want to destroy all other web pages, but they're not bothered about the server itself. Whereas MultiversX's revenue stream, as I understand it, is going to come from different versions of web pages. They're then competing with other companies in that space through one way or another, whether it might be IP, market share, whatever it is, they're competing. So they are the server and the website. Whereas most other blockchains are just the server. They're not creating their own websites. And that's got potential, but got real risk too.
Iris, yeah, I understand the point completely, and it is very different to many other blockchains, as you've been mentioning. I would just say, yes, they are creating their own products. They are basically going to be competing in different industries, as well as running the server, as you put it. Do you not think that, I mean, you mentioned the good points of that as well, but you've got the revenue from the server like all other blockchains and everything like that, and using it and so on and so forth. But then you've also got the products, which can also give more revenue, as you mentioned. And as I said before, like, they don't have to be the top in the industry. They just have to make it above cost to make it profitable. And if it's more and more profits, then they can invest more and more, and then they build more and more cool stuff. And I don't know, do you see a little bit like that? I think you're very much looking at the overall vision of billions and billions of people being on this platform and taking over the world. And maybe Benjamin is being a little too philosophical with that point. But there is still a path here where you can make a profitable business which keeps on growing over time. Would you say that?
I do, yeah, but you can't be both things. You can't. So if that's the way they're going, and they're going to be more niche and a little bit, not under the radar, but smaller, and but that's definitely not what they're projecting at all. And if that's what they're looking to do, then yeah, potentially. But who is going to be this? Why would you want to be a customer of something that's smaller in 4, 5, 6 facets of your life that will become more and more important when you could be a customer of a much larger group of those entities? The second point is that, which you alluded to there, which is, you're absolutely right that the benefit of this is that they own the network and the website and so on, and there is benefits to that, as I said. But what's to stop Hbar letting other people take the risk, which is exactly what they're doing? They're taking no risk because they're just supplying the pipes. They're not paying for the liquid running through the pipes. Let me start a company, call it Utopian Lab, go to all the risk, raise all the investment, go out, hit the streets and blah, blah, blah. They quietly sit back and wait. And then once I've built a really decent business on their network, approach me and buy me out. They've had none of the risk, none of the cost. They pay me for a successful product. And then they're MultiversX. They own the server and the website. PayPal hasn't killed me. I've managed to make it through the cracks. I've signed up enough people. I've got a contract. Why don't they just go and buy Crypto.com? If Crypto.com had been built on Hbar, why don't Solana approach Block Assets, which I was an early investor in, who are becoming an incredibly successful NFT platform with 63%-ish of the UFC roster? I just approach them and say, we'd like to buy you. They've taken none of the risk. They get to market quick. It's an established brand. They take them over, lock, stock, and barrel, and they're done. That would be a much de-risked approach to achieve what MultiversX are doing. But MultiversX are carrying all of the risk that all the other companies building on these platforms are taking, and with a massive potential upside, but massive risk too.
So I don't know what happened there. I tried to unmute, it didn't work. Thank you for that, Max. Thank you very much. And I just wanted to give Andre just 1 second because he requested to speak. I don't know if you have a question there, and then we can start wrapping up soon, I think, because I want to respect everyone's time here.
Thank you so much. My question is, you're talking about taking on PayPal at a worldwide level, and that's, I guess, nearly impossible. But what do you think about affirming yourself in a certain country? Because MultiversX has a powerful presence in Romania, France, maybe some other places. Revolut did something like country hopping, gaining a foothold in a country and then moving to others. And what do you think about that?
Yeah, I think that. Are you guys there?
Yep.
Sorry,
can hear you,
yeah. Sorry, my car just battery turned off. So I think yeah, that they could get some really good, strong footholds in countries where potentially the larger companies aren't really paying much attention, or for whatever reason are banned, or whatever. But it still ends up at the same place, which is they either stay relatively small and therefore not what they set out to do and not what you guys hope and I hope they will become, or they get noticed, which means they either get bought or killed. So, and I know it's a lot longer discussion than kind of just a half an hour Twitter Spaces. But okay, so my question to you would be, what happens next? So if they start getting a really decent foothold in Romania or Australia, wherever, they will get the attention of a competitor, and that's when the problems will start. But it isn't going to just happen in one area of their company. It's going to happen on every area of their company. They'll either be so small that it makes no difference to anyone, including the people who've invested in the project and backed it, or they'll get big enough to get noticed by the people who can and will do damage. You know, these companies are hiring private detectives, making up fake lawsuits. They're doing all sorts. You know, we all know, we're all adults. We all know how the real world works, particularly with the Web2 companies. And I just think some of the fights that they have, and forgive me if there were fights, but some of the markets they've chosen to, you know, have a fight in they're the most cutthroat industries that you can list. So I just think there's a heck of a risk. And if they concentrated on something like XRP, for example, I have issues with XRP, which a lot of people find unpopular, but at least they are trying to be the payment network for the world. That is it. They want to be the payment network at an institutional level for banking for the world. It's a highly, highly competitive market, but that's the market they've chosen and they're going for it. And it's very concentrated effort in one particular place. To try and do any one of the tasks that MultiversX is setting out to do is a mammoth task, but to do all of them, regardless of the size, whether they become a small multiverse, a small wallet, and a small thing, they're still massive industries. And you need the network effect, by the way. It doesn't work because if you're in country A and you want to send money to country B has to be using that too. You need that network effect for everything they're trying to do. It needs to be big or it'll be nothing. But I could be wrong about that. That's what I believe.
Thank you for answering that, and thank you, Andre, for coming up with your question. That was a good question, I think, because, you know, obviously things start out in a certain market and then they grow from there, and then they try and reach new markets and so on as well. I would just say as well, in terms of like valuation, price, investment, all of these kind of things, if you look at, I mean, you know, crypto market is very speculative. You can always say if it's overvalued or undervalued based on what your opinions are of the technology. But if you look at the rest of the market, you've got most other cryptocurrencies, Hbar, I think, as well, above MultiversX in the market cap. And a lot of these ones are just doing the server role, basically. So if you have any I understand like the risks of making these products as well, but if you have any advantage, you think that the products are very good, you think that they can make some profit or they can bring in more customers to the ecosystem and so on and so forth, then in terms of valuation, you would value it higher in some ways, would you not?
Yeah, absolutely. In theory, yeah, you're absolutely right. You would value it higher, but it doesn't. I think you cannot ignore the risks. And value is a very funny thing. So, yeah, I mean, time's going to prove that out. Who knows? Because a lot of value is perceived of what it's going to be worth in the future, not what it's worth today, and nobody knows where that's going to go. No one. So, yeah, I think it. It depends. As an investment, I think it's high potential, high reward, high risk, and something like Hbar is almost the opposite.
Fair enough. Well, thank you very much. And I just wanted to, because I know people have things to do, people have meetings and so on and so forth. I just wanted to wrap up now. And I wanted to thank you, Max. Thank you for coming on. And I hope this was an informed discussion, which a lot of people can take some good points from. And I think, to be honest, I think the whole ecosystem enjoys criticizing to some extent, constructive criticism, so that we can improve, so that the products here can improve, so that more builders can come, and so on and so forth. So we do respect your criticism a lot, Max, and I hope maybe we can even discuss it further at some point as well, and a little bit more on Hbar as well, because we didn't even get into Hbar in this spaces.
Yeah, absolutely. That it'd be my pleasure. I'd love to come on again, maybe, and have a conversation. And if people got questions and stuff, we can go through all those. That'd be absolutely, it'd be fine. And by the way, this comes from a good place, I must say. This is not me trying to FUD somebody else's project or anything like that. These are all just, I have concerns about Hbar, which I voice, often. So it's just about me questioning, because what I really care about is the people who believe in something, invest in it with their hard-earned money, expecting a reward in the future, or and so that's what I care about, because it's different for the people directly involved in the project. It's their risk to take, and it's their cup to win. It's their business. But I care about the people who invest in things, because based off the information that they are given by the people who talk about it, because that's all they've got to go from, because they're not on the inside. So you said yourself, you seem very well versed in MultiversX, but you told me you don't know what their costs are. You don't know what their burn rate is. They do. And what runway have they got? Is it 6 months? Is it a year? Is it 2? What are their financial, and all that stuff. So you can only make an investment with your money that's hard earned in the real world. And I get that. So I try to help people see all of the information, good and bad, about anything that they might be thinking about investing in. And that's where it comes from.
Yeah, and I appreciate you coming up and speaking to that. It's definitely tough for people to hear criticism and comments sometimes on things that they are so passionate about, but it's needed at times. And to the point about them being squashed by competitors or taken over, that, if you think about it, that could actually possibly explain their plan. And for Max and for others that may not be aware, us in the community certainly are aware, and this is what drives a lot of us crazy, is the fact that they haven't done a lick of marketing until 2023. And they still haven't really done a ton. And Benny's made it very clear in his speeches that they want to have the foundation in place and really make sure everything is kind of top notch before pushing it out, which it has its pros and cons. And you want to launch and get eyes on something early because the network effect is powerful. But to your point about drawing attention from those that may have other thoughts, if you think about it, that could be part of the reason why they aren't releasing now, because what they do build and what they have created is so great and so powerful. So if they create all this stuff and have it ready to go, and then they really push out there, they're going to be a lot harder to squash. That's for sure, because they're going to be a leader at that point, and no one's going to be able to. And if you keep building things like Exporter and you have half a dozen other protocols and tools like it, I don't care how much money you have, like Facebook, you're not going to be able to come and squash it in 6 months or a year. It's just not going to happen, because there's so much more behind it, to the foundation. But it brings up a good point. And what I also will say is, again, we're going to try and wrap this up because we've already gone longer than we wanted. it's great to hear that you're open to doing a follow-up. What I'm going to do after we get off this is shoot you some notes that I had too from your video, just on some minor corrections of numbers here and there, so we can discuss on that next time as well. And I definitely want to pick your brain more on stuff that you mentioned that is hard to find, that you're looking for as a researcher, because I think that's important. We want to know what things people can't find when they're going in to look at an ecosystem, and what things maybe should be on the website or accessible via the website. And we may agree and disagree on some things, but I definitely want to dive into your thoughts on that a little bit more. I know you covered that for a couple minutes in your video, but Don's got his hand up. So what's going on, Don?
Yeah, I just wanted to say really quick. Everything that Max has brought up is, the concerns of all new companies. Whether or not the new company's either going to take them out, hostile takeovers, things of that nature, and yet new companies still come out, still become successful, and stuff of that nature. And I think what Max is saying here is, I don't know if he doesn't want it to be. I'm sure he doesn't want it to be, because I'm sure his intentions are pure here. He just doesn't want us to be the MySpace of blockchain, where, it comes out, it's a great idea, everybody's with it, and then there comes Facebook with the funding. Am I correct, Max, on that?
Yeah, that's exactly right. And there's loads of examples. Blu-ray and VHS is probably VHS and beta, is probably the greatest example. It's not even necessarily about. It's quite often not about the best tech. Everyone keeps telling me, all the devs that I work with keep telling me how rubbish iPhones are, but they have a small market share, but they make the most profit per phone by some margin. And it isn't because they've got the best tech; it's because they've got the most money. And so it just makes me nervous. And they're not trying to do as many things as they're diverse now, but they certainly at the beginning weren't trying to do as many things as MultiversX is. And I wish the project I hope it absolutely becomes a behemoth and becomes everything that it sets out to. There's no ill intent. I'm just pointing out what to me are blaringly obvious concerns that I'd be worried about people who are buying into a project that don't have those concerns, because to me they're pretty obvious. I mean, Microsoft were caught putting moles into other people's companies. These companies are hiring people who are being paid by Microsoft.
Hey, Max, I mean, if we're being honest here, I think people have been killed. I mean, I think it's gone that far. Yeah.
That's probably, I'm sure over the years, stuff like that's gone on. So
yeah, definitely in the pharmaceutical industry.
Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah, I think that's been proven.
Yep.
I mean, the pharmaceutical industry is the only one that they're probably the top 5 that they're not going into. But that's those are the arenas they're playing in. And but jokes aside, they're going into 3 different arenas, and it's that cutthroat. So how much is it going to cost? How much have they got, and when do they think it's going to happen? And what happens? What's plan B? I don't know. Do they have one? I don't know. I don't think anybody knows, because who publishes a plan B? Yeah, and it's fine for all the other platforms because they're not the ones taking the risk.
Yeah, completely. And, I mean, there is so much to discuss, and there's so many things to go on here. And Apple, I mean, they are the best. They're the best in profit wise because they've got the customers. They've got all of the people that want to pay these high prices. And then the app developers, as you were mentioning earlier, they didn't want to go to Apple because they didn't want to build on it. They also didn't want the fees of the App Store, but they had to in the end. And, Facebook was one of the big ones, which actually caved in the end and went to Apple, and they ended up paying a lot of money and getting a lot of their information going through Apple in the end. But
and this happens in every single industry. Yes. I own a chain of 5-star hotels, and I can tell you, hoteliers hate Booking.com. They charge between 15 and 21% of the gross booking price, but guess what? That's where all the customers are. So most hotels are there. And we've tried lobbying. People have tried, much bigger companies than me have tried lobbying, tried coming off the site and then just come back with a tail between their legs. Because the minute you get that network effect, the minute you have market share, you have enough money to advertise, you have enough money to keep developing and building, and you have enough money to kill the competition. So every time a small competitor comes up, a local hotel offering competitor, they either buy them and burn them or kill them, just by any means necessary.
And that's why you need bigger partners.
Yeah.
If you're gonna play in that arena, you need some big partners. And what Max is saying is 1000% correct, because anyone remember Saturn, the car company Saturn? They were beginning their electric car, and Texaco came and bought the patent, not for the car, but for the battery. Because electric cars typically were running about 99 to 100 miles to the charge. And, they came out, I think it was 150 or 200. Texaco came, bought the patent for the battery, put it in the desk drawer, good night. That was it.
Exactly. Yeah, it happens all the time. There's loads of IP in patents in drawers of large companies. They'll sue MultiversX on nonsense, but they'll also sue everyone who works there personally. So at the very least, they're not concentrating on the job properly because they're worrying about losing their house over some nonsense trumped up charges. But if you're making $500 million a week, you can pay the best lawyers, barristers in the world, and then you can put all the defense ones on retainer and sue Ben personally for having done nothing wrong, and just tie him up in litigation for years. Just drain him and drain him and drain him and drain him. So the website can be fantastic, but his mind's not in the game because he's been sued, and then he's been followed, and on and on, and it's unfortunate, it's disgusting, but it's the world we live in, unfortunately. And I wouldn't be mentioning this if their aspirations weren't so big, which I admire, but it comes at a cost.
Yeah, completely, and it is definitely a cutthroat world out there. I will say one thing that would be good from the suing is that's free marketing.
Yeah, very true.
Like,
yeah,
oh,
very
Google's
true.
suing this company. Who are they?
Listen, guys, I've got to go because I'm actually 2 minutes late to a meeting now. But it's been an absolute pleasure, and we should definitely do this again sometime.
Well, thank you for coming on, Max, and we appreciate all the comments and the criticisms, and we would love to have another space again, man.
Perfect. Take care, guys. Really nice to speak to you all.
See you later, man.
Thank you. Bye.
And we're also going to wrap it up here because we're over half an hour already. So I just want to thank everyone for coming. This is xSpaces. We do this twice a week, Tuesdays and Fridays, 4 p.m. UTC, trying to get on the best guests, the best topics, and just trying to see what we can do to improve the building and the views of the space and how we market and so on. We have a lot to do, and well, we just look forward to talking about this every single day, pretty much. So thank you all for coming. I'm not